In this video, we're going to look at performing calculations with values in tables. We're going to start in the supply invoice statement. And the first thing Zara would like to do is find out the total amount paid according to our supplier. So we're going to click into W1 and we're doing sum, so equals sum, tab to open our brackets, and we didn't use named ranges in here. So we're going to select our column. Remember, we can just come up to the top of the column, not the worksheet column, but the table column, and single click. And it has selected the whole thing. But what's happened over here is quite unusual. Instead of putting our usual cell references, Excel's put what's called a structured reference. And this is what you're going to get when you perform calculations with values in a table. It's quite easy to understand. It starts with the name of the table. It then has the name of the column enclosed in square brackets. And this is saying add up the values in the amount column in the table supplier. And when we press enter, we get the answer. Now, structured references are very robust. If I change the name of the table, the structured reference will update. If I remove the table altogether, the structured reference will revert back to normal references. So a little bit more robust than named ranges. Let's look at another example. So I'd like to know how many payments were made altogether according to the supplier. And for this, we're going to use Excel's rows function. So I'm going to type equals ROW and down to select rows plural. And now it's asking for a column, a row, or even a block of data. I can use the entire table. So if I just type TB and select my table supplier, it has selected the whole table. I could have chosen a column as well, but that will work fine. And when I press enter, 84 rows. And let's look at something quite interesting. The next thing Zara wants to do is find out for each invoice how many days it was since the invoice being issued and invoice being paid. So we're going to take the paid date and subtract the invoice date. We're clicking into T2 and typing equals. And I'm going to click on paid date. Couple of differences. First of all, you'll notice the table name has not been included this time. Well, I'll explain why in a moment. But the other thing that's different is it's included this @ symbol. We didn't select the whole column. We're not actually trying to work with the whole column this time. We're only trying to work with a single cell. And what that @ means is get the value in this row in the paid date column. Let's do our minus now. We're going to click on invoice date, and you'll see they get the same thing. Subtract the invoice date value in this row. Okay, we're now going to press enter. How amazing was that? It has extended the table one column to the right and copied the formula down for us. And now the only thing left for us to do is to come in and give it a sensible name. So we're going to call this days to pay. Just click on cell and type the name. And now we see why we didn't include the table name, because Excel realized that this was going to be part of the table. So we have a calculation in a table. It doesn't put the table name, but where the calculation is outside of the table, it will put the table name, because obviously we might have more than one table. So it needs to be clear about which one we are using. Let's have a look at one more calculation so we can understand how these structured references work a little better. We're going to do this in the recon analysis, but we're going to use the MC data. So I'm going to click in here for a moment. Now the last thing that Zara wants to do here is find out the total overdue days and the total late charges for each of our regions, Sydney and Melbourne, and we're going to do this in our recon analysis. What we would like to do though is to create a calculation that can be dragged down and across, because our late charge column is actually next to our days overdue column, and we can do this using structured references. So we're going to start with our equals, and remember, going to need a sum ifs for this calculation. Now sum range is our days overdue. But if I used a named range, I wouldn't be able to drive the formula across. If I used a structured reference, however, interestingly, I can. So we're going to choose our table, which is table MCI. But now we need to specify a column. And rather than typing, if you just type your square bracket, look at that, all the column names actually come up. And the one we want is overdue by. So I'm just going to double click to select, and we do need to close our square bracket. Now a structured reference is a bit like a mixed cell reference. When we drag it down, it will still refer to the rows in that column, so the rows are locked. But when we drag it across, it will actually move to the next column on the right. Okay, now type a comma. The next thing we need is our criteria range, which is our location. Now we do not want this to change when we drag across. We need this to remain absolute and use our named range again. And then a comma. And then finally, our actually criteria is Sydney. So I'm going to click on A8, but again, we need a mixed reference this time when we drag across. We need it to stay locked, but when dragged down, we need it to change. So we're going to press F4 once, twice, and 3 times. We've got the dollar just in front of the A. And we can close our brackets and press enter. Let's start with dragging the formula down. So I'm going to double click. Yep, it looks okay. And then we're going to drag across. Little tip if you come to your fill options and choose fill without formatting. You can copy your formula down without copying the formatting. Well, that's looking good, but let's just go and double check. So now double check this one and you will see that it has moved to the next column in the table, which is our late charge. It has kept the location the same and wanted this kept, the A, the same. It has changed the row. So 3 types of references we've looked at. There are structured references, which behave a bit like mixed cell references, locking the rows but not the columns. Our named range, which are usually absolute, and mixed references using our dollars there. There's no right or wrong about which one to use. It's helpful to know about all 3 and to use the one that will help you solve the problem that you have most effectively. So as well as structured referencing and calculations, we also had a brief look at how tables auto-extend. This is our first hint of the automation capabilities in tables. We're going to explore this even further in the next video.